All right, what do we have to know about SOC 3 engagements? A SOC 3 is a general use version of a SOC 2. SOC 3 is a shorter, high-level attestation report, and a SOC 3 provides reasonable assurance, just like a SOC 1 and a SOC 2, but unlike a SOC 1 and SOC 2, SOC 3 does not require a non-disclosure agreement, so a SOC 3 can be shared widely. So SOC 3 is for service organizations who want to communicate to a broad audience that they have controls in place to meet the AICPA's trust services criteria, which include, as we recall, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. But a SOC 3 can be issued without divulging the detailed or sensitive information that appears in a SOC 2. And for that reason, SOC 3 is often used in marketing or sales materials to demonstrate an organization's commitment to strong controls without having to worry about divulging detailed or sensitive information. All right, let's try this. Which of the following best describes the primary purpose of a SOC 3 engagement? A, to provide detailed test procedures and results to interested parties. B, to present a publicly distributable general use report demonstrating compliance with the AICPA's trust services criteria. C, to include detailed financial statement analysis for external auditors, or D, all of these. And the answer is B, to present a publicly distributable general use report demonstrating compliance with the AICPA's trust services criteria. Because a SOC 3 is designed to be a high-level, publicly distributable document that demonstrates a service organization's adherence to the AICPA's trust services criteria, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Unlike a SOC 2, which contains sensitive information and detailed test procedures, a SOC 3 summarizes the overall control environment in a way that can be shared broadly and posted publicly on websites. Purpose of a SOC 3 is to provide assurance to a wide audience, customers, prospects, and the general public, without revealing proprietary or detailed control testing data. A is wrong. Provide detailed test procedures and results. That's part of a SOC 2 report. C is wrong. SOC 3 engagements focus on the trust services criteria, not on financial statement analysis. Financial statements and their related controls or audit procedures, that falls under SOC 1. Let's quickly review all three SOC reports. So SOC 1 is for financial reporting controls. It's restricted use, very detailed, and for that reason it has to be limited in distribution. SOC 2, instead of being about financial reporting controls, it has to do with the trust services criteria. It's restricted use, very detailed, and for that reason it's limited in distribution. SOC 3, we said, is a general use SOC 2. So trust services criteria, but for general use. High-level summary rather than detailed, and for that reason SOC 3 is available to the general public. And that might be the only thing you have to know about a SOC 3 on the exam, that it's trust services criteria, much like a SOC 2, but for general use. High-level summary rather than detailed, and most importantly, a SOC 3 is available for public use. Is a SOC 1 or a SOC 2 available for public use? No. SOC 1 and SOC 2 are limited, restricted use. All right, which trust services criteria are most commonly covered in a SOC 3 engagement? A says security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. That sounds pretty good. How about B? Risk assessment, control environment, and information and communication. Well, if the question asked about the COSO internal control framework, well, B would be your answer. But the question's asking about trust services criteria in a SOC 3 engagement, so B is out. C, security. Okay, that's part of trust services criteria. Fraud detection? No. Continuous monitoring? No. Data analytics? No. So A is correct. The AICPA's trust services criteria for SOC 2 and SOC 3 engagements include security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. These criteria serve as the framework for evaluating and reporting on an organization's controls relating to things like IT systems and data handling. In a SOC 3 engagement, which is a general use version of a SOC 2, these same criteria are assessed. What criteria is assessed in a SOC 3? Security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. The trust services criteria are covered in a SOC 3. It's just that in a SOC 3 engagement, which is a general use version of a SOC 2, these same criteria are assessed, but they're reported on in a more high-level format in a SOC 3, so it can be shared publicly. B is wrong because risk assessment, control environment, information and communication, that's part of the COSO internal control framework. C is wrong. Security, fraud detection, continuous monitoring, and data analytics. While security is part of the trust services criteria, the others are not. Fraud detection, continuous monitoring, data analytics, not the formal criteria named by the AICPA in the trust services criteria. And the question asked, which trust services criteria are most commonly covered in the SOC 3? And the answer is A. All right, why might a service organization choose to share a SOC 3 report instead of a SOC 2? A, to provide an alternative to financial statement audits. B, to replace compliance requirements for industry-specific regulations. C, to allow public distribution without disclosing detailed testing procedures. Or D, to comply with mandatory reporting requirements for private organizations. And the answer is C, to allow public distribution without disclosing detailed testing procedures. SOC 3 reports are high-level, publicly distributable documents that summarize a service organization's adherence to the AICPA's trust services criteria. Unlike SOC 2 reports, which include detailed descriptions of controls, testing procedures, and results, a SOC 3 omits that sensitive information. Because of this deliberate omission, SOC 3 reports can be shared broadly, publicly, like on a company's website, without revealing proprietary or confidential details. A is wrong. SOC 3 does not replace or serve as alternatives to financial statement audits. B is wrong. SOC 3 does not automatically replace any existing compliance obligations. Different industries have their own specific regulatory requirements that we've learned, like HIPAA, PCI DSS. SOC 3 alone does not fulfill that. And D is wrong. There's no general mandate requiring all private organizations even issue a SOC 3. While some customers or partners may request assurance reports, SOC 3 is not a mandatory requirement. Many organizations choose SOC 3 voluntarily for broad-based assurance. And the question asks, why might a service organization choose to share a SOC 3 instead of a SOC 2? And the answer is C, to allow public distribution without disclosing detailed testing procedures. Let's do a little SOC 3 Type 1 versus SOC 3 Type 2 now. Type 1 focuses on whether the controls are designed and implemented effectively as of a specific date, and a SOC 3 Type 2 adds operating effectiveness over a defined period like 6 or 12 months. So whether the service organization needs only a point-in-time assurance, Type 1, or a period of time, Type 2, that's typically the deciding factor in whether the CPA firm prepares a SOC 3 Type 1 report or a SOC 3 Type 2. All right, which factor primarily determines whether a SOC 3 report is issued as a Type 1 or a Type 2? A, the CPA firm's inclination to offer publicly distributable reports. B, the service organization's need to verify control operation over a span of time. C, whether the service organization is publicly held or privately owned. D, the requirement imposed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And the answer is B. The primary factor that determines whether SOC 3 is issued as a Type 1 or Type 2 is the service organization's need to verify control operation over a span of time. Because a Type 1 engagement evaluates whether controls are designed and implemented effectively as of a specific date, but a Type 2 engagement includes not only the design and implementation, but also the operating effectiveness of those controls, and not just as of a specific date, but over a defined period like 6 months or even a year. Therefore, the primary factor that determines whether a SOC 3 or even SOC 2 engagement is a Type 1 or Type 2 is the service organization's goal, whether they need a point-in-time, Type 1 report, or they want to demonstrate ongoing control effectiveness over a period of time, a Type 2. And the question asked, which factor primarily determines whether SOC 3 report is issued as a Type 1 or Type 2, and it's all up to the service organization and whether they need to verify control operation over a span of time, or whether they just need to verify control design and implementation at a specific point in time. B is correct. It's certainly not A, the CPA firm's inclination to offer publicly distributable reports. It's not about the CPA firm at all. C, whether the service organization is publicly held or privately owned has no impact on whether a Type 1 or Type 2 is issued. And the SEC does not impose any requirements to issue SOC reports. All right, the exam could ask who are the intended users of a SOC 3 report. So SOC 3 reports are generally designed for anyone interested in the organization's controls, including both existing customers, potential customers, regulators of the government, business partners, and the general public. Because it's a shorter, high-level report, SOC 3, we said, does not require a non-disclosure agreement. It can be shared widely. Service organizations often require a non-disclosure agreement for a SOC 2 and a SOC 1, but not for a SOC 3. So users include a very broad public audience. Customers and prospective clients, you got the current and prospective clients who require some level of assurance about the service organization's trust services, but do not need or lack the expertise to interpret the more detailed SOC 2 report. They often review the SOC 3. For example, a company selling cloud services might post its SOC 3 seal on its website simply to reassure users about its security practices. And because the SOC 3 is presented in a simpler, more consumer-friendly manner, it's useful to stakeholders who do not have any technical or audit background, but still want assurance about the organization's control environment. So, which of the following best describes the intended users of a SOC 3 report? A, exclusively internal management of the service organization? No. B, only auditors and risk specialists under strict confidentiality? No. This is SOC 3. C, law enforcement agencies and federal regulators? D, a broad general audience including customers, prospects, and the general public. That's the best answer, letter D. D is correct, a broad general audience including customers, prospects, and the general public, because SOC 3 reports are designed as general use reports. They can be freely distributed. They can be posted on the company's website because they omit detailed testing procedures and results. So these reports can be understood by a wide variety of stakeholders, including customers, prospective clients, and other non-technical parties without disclosing sensitive control information. The primary goal of SOC 3 is to provide high-level assurance regarding the service organization's adherence to the trust services criteria. A is wrong. SOC 3, they're specifically designed for external and public use, not solely for internal stakeholders, such as management. B is wrong. This description is more aligned with SOC 2, where it says only auditors and risk specialists, because that would be restricted use, and SOC 2 would contain detailed testing procedures. SOC 3, on the other hand, can be shared publicly without a non-disclosure agreement. And C is wrong. While regulators or government authorities may be interested in an organization's controls, a SOC 3 is not specifically targeted to law enforcement or federal regulators. SOC 3 is meant to be made available to any interested party, not a specialized or restricted audience. So the question asks which of the following best describes the intended user of SOC 3, and the answer is D, a broad general audience including customers, prospects, and the general public. Let's try this. A CPA firm has been engaged to evaluate the operating effectiveness of controls over security, availability, confidentiality, and privacy for a cloud service provider that handles sensitive financial data. The service provider's stakeholders, including customers and business partners, require a detailed report on testing procedures and results to assess how effectively the organization protects its data. Which of the following SOC reporting engagements should the CPA firm consider providing? A says SOC 1 because it involves providing opinions on management's assertions regarding controls over financial reporting. B says SOC 2 because it addresses controls over security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy of a service organization's systems. C says SOC 3 because it provides a general use report that outlines the service organization's controls related to information systems and data security. And D says a financial statement audit because it includes the same in-depth testing of information security and privacy controls. And if you think you know, go ahead and leave me the answer in the comments section. And if you found this video helpful and want to see the rest of it and more videos like it, go to I75CPAreview.com and get yourself on I-75 with me. Darius Clark, because the right teacher makes all the difference.